The following video is brought to you by the guys at the Wrecking and Racing Podcast, a NASCAR podcast made by the fans for the fans. Check them out at www.wreckingandracing.com, facebook.com/wreckingandracing, and Twitter @wreckingandracing. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Saka here, and welcome back to another episode of NASCAR Racing 2003 season, the 2019 mod, and we are here at Kansas for the cutoff race. Those who make it past this round will go on to the round of 8, and only 8 drivers can make it. Myself and Brandon are locked in with our previous wins this round, but Brandon is on the pole in that wreckingandracing.com podcast Toyota. Brad Keselowski to his outside. We're inside row 2, ready for 27 wonderful laps here at Kansas. Green flag should be out shortly, and we are racing at Kansas 2014 FSE is the track we're currently running. That's why Kansas looks a little bit darker. Both lanes are very quick, and the car is loose indeed to start. We're right under the 2, and the car starts to feel a little bit loose. Try to get that run down the back straightaway on the inside of Keselowski. He doesn't give us anything as he rolls out 3 wide behind us as those cars battle for 4th place on back. Brad is clear, and Brandon sets sights on the lead, and that is the first lap in the books. So Brad is not going to roll over and let us go, it seems. Brad has a lot to gain here. A spot in the round of 8, really. And most of these cars up front are indeed in the championship hunt. So assuming that no crashes happen, they should have a pretty good run unless pit strategy bites them. We will have to pit this race. We cannot go the entire way on fuel. But tires, now that is a question for another day. If we have enough fuel that we can only put in 1 can and be good, we might try some strategy. 4 tires is always the safest bet, though. You'll have the best grip, but right sides might prove fruitful in the end. We'll just have to see how this race unfolds. And already Kyle Busch down there on the bottom hounding us here on the inside of Keselowski. It looks like he has a bit of a run. If he gets below us, I'm not going to push the issue too much. Brandon has quite a healthy lead, and we're not catching him as of yet. Really scraping into turn 1, however. Kyle Busch right there with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., it looks like, on the bottom. Kyle looks to the inside, doesn't have the run, and he backs off going into turn 3. Much appreciated, Kyle. He might try to pick up the center of the corner and drive off. And we're sort of maintaining station with Brandon, not catching up too awful quick, and Kyle Busch is right there on our bumper. He definitely rolls out of the turn before us. It could be tire strategy. He might be trying to save his stuff, or he may be trying to roll that center off and get that drive. Brandon scraping a ton in 3 and 4, though. This game doesn't simulate the track bar being worn down, but if it did, I don't know if Brandon would have a track bar left. I mean, just look at all the sparks going into that turn. He's bottoming out, waiting for these pressures to come up, and the car is okay. It hasn't bottomed out. Usually when it starts sparking, you look for the splitter to really impact the racing surface, and up the track you go. And these first 5 cars, myself, Brandon, Kyle Busch, Stenhouse, and Brad, are sort of gapping the field tremendously. I don't see anybody back there. I do see a couple now behind Brad peeking into view, so the lead pack is fairly close together, and we are doing a decent job of holding Kyle Busch back there in that Interstate Batteries Toyota, running that special paint scheme this particular week for no particular reason other than that's what the game put him in. And he has got a run down the front stretch. He'll go out to the wall. He won't show us the inside. He is holding that yellow line in turns 1 and 2, however. Everyone pretty much holding station single file. It may run like this until pit stops. Now, myself and Brandon usually pit at the halfway mark in these races, and depending on how tires are looking, I may take 2, I may take 4. I don't know what Brandon is up to. We usually, in the spirit of competition, we don't really discuss what tires we're taking on our pit stops because we run the same identical setup, so it really comes down to the driver, but the pit strategy can separate us a bit. That and of course lap traffic, which at this clip that we are going at, we may actually run into before this race is over. It's always a big question mark whether or not traffic becomes a thing. And Kyle Busch is dropping back a bit, falling into the clutches of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. We're starting to gap him, and it looks like the good is starting to wear off of his tires, maybe picking up the throttle hard on corner middle to exit. Really burned up his right front. Either that or I've been playing too much NASCAR Heat, in which tire wear is way more pronounced in that particular game than NASCAR racing. Either that or the driving styles of this sim are different than NASCAR Heat, and the tire wear is different. And Brandon's sort of gapping us a bit. We're holding station, sort of within striking distance if he were to bobble, but he's holding a pretty wheel and driving away from us maybe a tenth at a time. Lap times are very, very similar here. And we are basically redlining going into the first turn, really getting that engine up to song. Temperatures are holding okay though. We haven't hit 220 on the water yet, and that's usually the first sign that you're overworking your engine, is the water temp skyrocket. So we're right at the amount of tape that we need on the front to help us slip through the air very quickly, help us pivot in these turns. But I mean, it's right on that border of 220. We wash up just a little bit, overdrove turn 1, but because Kyle is not near us, he can't capitalize on our overdriving ways. And Brandon's sort of running that higher groove. He's not holding the white line. We're sort of running that middle groove as well. I don't know if Kyle is slowing down more than us to hold that white line on the bottom. Could be a thing, but we are definitely carrying that speed out of turn 4. And yeah, Kyle Busch is just a blip on the radar now. He is way back there, and Brandon is picking it up. So holding station in second. Usually we're a little bit better on pit road entry and exit than Brandon. That might reel him in. It's not a guarantee, however. And the race is ticking by very quickly. Only 40 miles here to run. And we should be nearing pit stops. If I was so inclined, I would raise my pressures up probably a pound in all the tires so we don't scrape so bad. Get a little bit more positive feel in this wheel. Because as it's grinding, we're losing speed and the car is getting upset at us just a little bit. Doesn't seem to be bothering Brandon much at all. He is definitely taking that high lane, carrying that speed and rolling center off. You can sort of see that gap right there where he just goes down the back straightaway and leaves us a little bit. I don't want to go walking up the track too awful much. I'm comfortable here, and Brandon is heading to pit road. We'll go around on the outside and pit next time by. Try to get as much as we can out of this on these tires, and I think we're going to go for 2. The left sides are not showing so much wear, and if Brandon goes for 4, I think we can leapfrog him here. So we have to be nice and careful on pit road entry. Of course, the AI probably won't pit this particular lap, but let's get it slowed down. There's the Kansas Speedway logo. There is the 3, 2, 1 marker down on pit road. Couple of quick downshifts, and 4,000 in second gear is the limit, possibly 4,500. We'll hover right below 4,500. Cars stay out on the racetrack. We are on pit road alone. There goes Brandon peeling away from his stall. We'll have a clean exit. Guys are up on the wall. Let's go right side tires, boys. Right sides are on first gear, letting the fuel dump in, and away we go. Good stop. Don't want to speed until right there. We're past the line. And we certainly do not want to make a mistake on this apron. Looking back in the mirror, perhaps the other cars are on pit road this time around. as they should be screaming by us, I would assume. Either that or our pit stop was just that good. But we will settle in here and see where we shake out. I do see cars in the mirror, but they're not catching us. Now, when they get on the fresh tires, and indeed, I do see them on pit road, whether or not they take 2 or 4, I see Denny Hamlin leaving his stall. There was Kyle Busch there. So that is the gap that we've had on Kyle, and we've extended it. He's definitely still on the apron. So they possibly took 4 tires in that exchange, allowing us to really gap the time. One thing I'm concerned about now is the lap cars that also took 4 tires. We are going to catch them tremendously. But I don't see anyone else on pit road. We have cycled back around to the lead, and Brandon is about 7 seconds behind us. And indeed, there are the lap cars. So 7 seconds to give up, I can do that, I believe, around these lap cars. We shouldn't lose 7 seconds over the course of this run. And just looking for that flag as we click off laps. Very clean race. It looks like everyone sort of went single file and minded their P's and Q's. I don't imagine anyone was side by side too much after the initial start of the race, and we can see the lap cars single file here as well. So Landon Castle will be our first target here in that 00. If he took 4 tires, he may actually be a little bit difficult to pass, as he is on fresher tires. We've got worn left sides. And indeed, we are scraping about as bad as Brandon did in the first turn, really bottoming out the car, but we are catching Landon and Jeffrey Earnhardt there. And we can almost keep Landon Castle in the windshield at all times. That's sort of how I gauge how quick I catch these guys, is in each turn, I see if I see them in my windshield. If they're out the windshield in one turn and not the one before, I know I'm making up time. So we'll go in turn 3 and see if we can catch Landon in our windshield. Luckily, they're pretty well spaced out. So once we do catch Landon, we can go high or low, and indeed, we kept him in the windshield a lot longer and picked him back up. Only lost him for but a brief moment. So we may be only 2 to 3 laps away from catching him. Not losing any speed in turn 1, we're still singing that engine in the low 9,000 RPM range going into turn 1. So our overall speed isn't bad. It's our corner speed that we would be the most affected by these tires, and we can almost keep Jeffrey Earnhardt out of the windshield as well. I'm going to go as hard as I can here to maintain that gap behind. That way, if I do run into issues with Landon or Jeffrey, I can take some time to get around them smartly. No one out the mirror, so I think 2 tires was definitely the right call here. A caution would reel everybody back in. Of course, this race certainly is not over by any stretch of the imagination, but we have to go while we can. And we should be getting a pull off of Landon Castle on the straightaway when we get around. And if he starts going side by side with Jeffrey, that's really going to reel everyone back in. Ross Chastain is actually dropping back to Jeffrey and Landon as well, getting that pull down the back straightaway. Let's see if we can get around them on the inside on the exit of 4. So Landon looks to the inside. He's going to stall us out. White flag is in the air. We don't need to pass these guys. We still have quite the lead. We'll go in under Jeffrey, peek to the middle of Landon, but I don't want to really charge Landon yet. We get to the inside. Oh, he's going to make it 3 wide under Chastain. All right, Landon rolls out. We drove in just a little bit more, and he goes to battle with Ross Chastain right away, but the checkered flag is out. That will be a win for us, our second win in the round of 12. That will gain us an additional 5 bonus points on Brandon for the round of 8. And that strategy call won us the race for sure. I don't know if I took 4 tires where myself and Brandon would have shaken out. That'd be a big question. There goes Brandon there. Let's see your top 10 and where everyone shook out. So, looking out the TV camera, myself in first, Brandon in second, in third, Kyle Busch, fourth place, Denny Hamlin, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in fifth, Brad Keselowski sixth, Jimmy Johnson in seventh, Eric Almirola in eighth, ninth place went to Bubba Wallace, 10th place went to Kurt Busch, and we will take a look at your championship contenders. So Brad came in sixth, Eric Almirola finished in eighth, Denny Hamlin in fourth, Ryan Blaney with a dismal 18th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with a 5th, Kyle Busch with the 3rd. Brandon took 2nd, I took the checkered flag. Larson came in 17th right in front of Ryan Blaney. Jimmy Johnson ended up in 7th, and we forgot old Joey Logano in 13th. So really the only big highlight of the race was the initial start when Kyle Busch was not letting us go. I mean, he was 3 wide right there with Blaney, Boyer, Harvick peeking in. I mean, the start was probably the best part until they all got single filed out. Pit stops was definitely the big game changer here at Kansas. So let's take a look at the cutoff scores for your round of 12. Ryan Blaney is the last driver to transfer in on points. Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Larson, Kurt Busch, and Joey Logano is out. And here's what the points will look like after the round reset. Brandon 62 clear, myself 52 points clear, but it is tight from Almirola up to Keselowski down to Kyle Busch, who is on the outside looking in. Ryan Blaney 5 back, Hamlin 13 back with Stenhouse 13 back going into the short track at Martinsville next week. But that will do it for me. Like, share, and subscribe if you are so bold. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week for Martinsville in NASCAR Racing 2003 season. Take care.